Today I'm going to show you how to knit a basic cowl. So this is a great video if you're a beginner knitter looking to try to knit your first accessory in the round. So if you're new to knitting in the round, this is a great video. I walk you through step by step how to make this simple cowl. All you need to know how to do is knit and purl. Cowls are great first projects to knit in the round because there's no increases and decreases and the stitch is very simple. This is a great video if you are a more experienced knitter and you're looking just for a basic cowl pattern that you can customize on your own. Be sure to stick around to the end. At the end of the video, I walk you through how to knit this cowl in any gauge. So meaning you can knit this cowl and get the same results if you change your needle size and change your yarn weight. I knit this cowl using 9mm needles and super bulky weight yarn. You might want to knit this with 5mm needles and worsted weight yarn. So I walk you through exactly how to do that. At the end, I also give you more ideas and how you can customize this and make this more unique and come up with your own design. All right, how about I show you what this cowl looks like on? This cowl is great because it is a little snug. I like snug cowls. We just went skiing, for example, and this was great to wear skiing. I could lift it up over my nose and it kind of stayed up over my nose and ears, or I could have it come up down my chin, over my chin. It's great to wear underneath coats. I don't like huge, thick cowls to wear underneath coats. I will show you what this looks like on. This is my favorite Amazon puffer. You definitely need one of these if you don't have one of them. I think I paid $40 for this and I have it in multiple colors. I will make sure that this puffer is linked for you in the video description. If you're here and you just want the simple pattern, head to the video description and there's a link that takes you to my website where the pattern is written out. So here's what it looks like underneath my awesome Amazon puffer in hunter green here. But anyway, stick around and I will walk you through exactly how to make this fun cowl. To knit this cowl, you're going to need 1 skein of Lion Brand Respun Thick and Quick yarn. This is considered a super bulky weight yarn, but I'd say it's a little bit on the thinner super bulky weight yarn size. This is the color Wisteria, or you can use another yarn of a similar size. You're going to need US 13 9mm 16-inch circular needles. We are knitting this in the round, so you will need circular needles. You're going to need a pair of scissors. You're going to need a tapestry needle to weave in the ends. You will need a stitch marker to denote the beginning and end of the round, and you're going to need a tape measure to measure the height of the cowl. Just for reference, the cowl is 11 inches wide, so it's 22 inches in circumference, and it measures about 9 inches high. So you can alter the cowl however you'd like based on the measurements that you would like it to be. If you want it to be wider, feel free to cast on more stitches. If you want it to be narrower, feel free to cast on less stitches. And then you can just change the height of the cowl by adding or subtracting rounds in the body of the cowl section. We are going to cast on 56 stitches using the long tail cast on method. And to make sure you have enough yarn for that long tail, I usually just wrap my yarn around my needle about 10 times. And then at the end, I know that this is the length I need to cast on 10 stitches, so I just use this to mark 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and we'll just round up to 60 to make sure I have enough. I grab the end, and this is the point where I make my slip knot, so I'm just going to make a basic slip knot here. Grab the yarn, pull through, I put the slip knot on my circular needle, I tighten the yarn, and now I'm going to make sure my tail is in the front. So when I grab it, that tail is going to go around my thumb, and the other side of the yarn is going to go around my index finger. And when you do the long tail cast on method, you turn the work so that you can grab it underneath your thumb, grab the yarn underneath the yarn that's around your thumb, and then you're going to go over the yarn around your index finger and pull that through. So now we have 2 stitches cast on. We're going to do that again. You grab the yarn, Go under the yarn around your thumb, over the yarn around your index finger, and pull through. So you're going to continue in this fashion until you have 56 stitches cast on. 54, 55, 56, and I'm actually going to cast on one more stitch to 57 because we're going to use this last stitch to connect our work in the round. We will drop the stitch once we've connected the work. So you're going to want to make sure your work is not twisted before we join in the round. And I like to just lay my needle flat and make sure everything is laying flat and the work looks like this. I've got the bottom all laying flat on the inside of the work. Okay, so now we're going to join in the round. We're going to join by slipping the last stitch on the left hand needle over to the right hand needle, slipping the last stitch that was on the right hand needle over the stitch we just slipped over, just like that. And then we drop that stitch, pull the work tight, and now you can place your stitch marker to denote the beginning and the end of the round. So now we're ready to begin the cowl in the round. We're knitting in the round. So we're going to do 3 rounds of knit 1, purl 1 to help us prevent the bottom from curling. So this will help the cowl to lay flat. So to do a knit 1, purl 1, or 1 by 1 rib, we simply knit 1 stitch, move the yarn to the front, and purl 1 stitch. Knit 1 stitch, purl 1 stitch, and you do this all of the way around. Now I'm nearing the end of my first knit 1, purl 1 round, my first 1 by 1 rib round. And once I reach that stitch marker, all I'm going to do is slip that over to the right hand needle, and now I know I just need to start my round again. So I should have ended with a purl. We have an even number of stitches, so if you're doing a knit 1, purl 1, you should end with a purl and always start with a knit. So now we're simply just going to knit 1, purl 1 again, or knit the purl stitches. Knit the knit stitches or purl the purl stitches. So we're going to do this again. Knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and you're going to do this until you have 3 rounds completed. So this is the start of my second round, so I am going to do one more round after this, and then we'll begin the main body of the cowl. We're knitting the knit stitches, purling the purl stitches. I'm nearing my second round now. The end of my second round, I'm going to start my third round, and I just work up until the stitch marker. I slip that, and now I know I'm at the beginning of the round. And you can see that I've knit 2 rows. You can count the knit stitches, 1, 2, or count the purl stitches, 1, 2. So now I know I'm at the beginning of my third round. So I'm going to continue this all the way around again. I'm nearing the end of my third round here of 1 by 1 rib, and now I'm going to work up to that stitch marker. I'm going to slip that stitch marker, and now I'm simply going to work the body of the cowl, which is going to be stockinette stitch. With stockinette stitch in the round, that just means we're simply knitting every stitch and every row. So you're just going to continue knitting all the way around. I'm at the end of the first round of my stockinette stitch. I simply slip the marker and then continue knitting every stitch every round. So I'm going to continue on until my cowl measures about 8 inches from the cast on. So that's measuring from here up. So right now I probably have a little over an inch. I have a little over an inch, so I'm going to continue until my work measures about 8 inches, and then we're going to start the ribbing for the top of the cowl. So continue knitting stockinette stitch until your whole cowl is about 8 inches from the cast on edge. I've knit stockinette stitch now until the cowl measures 8 inches from the cast on, so now I know it's time to work my 1x1 rib at the top. So I'll finish my last round here of stockinette. I only have 2 more stitches left, and then I will start my 1x1 rib again. So we're going to mirror what's on the bottom. We're going to knit 2 rounds in 1x1 rib, and then we're going to bind off on the 3rd round in 1x1 rib. So first just knit 1x1 rib for 2 rounds. I'm nearing the end of my first 1x1 rib round here at the top. I make sure I end with the purl stitch. I slip that stitch marker, and then I start the knit 1, purl 1 again all the way around. So this is my 2nd round, and then the next round we will start binding off. I'm finishing my 2nd round of 1x1 rib, and now I'm going to slip the stitch marker and start binding off in 1x1 rib by doing the following. We're going to work our first 2 stitches in the same established pattern, so that's knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. And once I've completed 2 stitches, I'm now going to start binding off by taking that first stitch I worked and slipping it over that 2nd stitch and dropping it off. So I've just bound off 1 stitch. I ended with a purl stitch, so now I'm going to work the next stitch, which is a knit stitch. And now whenever we have 2 stitches on our right hand needle, we're just going to bind off by slipping that first stitch over the 2nd stitch. So we continue working the 1x1 rib. Now I purl, but we're just simply binding off as we go by slipping that first stitch over the 2nd stitch. So you knit, bind off, purl, bind off. So you should never have more than 2 stitches on your right hand needle. So you continue doing this all the way around, working the established pattern, which is 1x1 rib, and binding off after you work each stitch. Just be careful that you're not binding off really tight. You want to make sure you have enough give so that you can put the cowl over your head. So you can bind off a little loose if you'd like. So I'm going to continue doing this all the way around, and then once I get towards the end, I will show you what to do to finish it off. I have a few stitches left for my 1x1 rib bind off here, and once you have 1 stitch left on your right hand needle, you've bound off as much as you can bind off, you simply snip the yarn here, leaving a little bit of a tail. That's probably about 6 inches or so, and then you just pull up gently through the yarn. You can remove the needles, and you're going to have a tail here. So now you're going to take your tapestry needle and you're going to weave this through the end here. And now we're going to connect the beginning and the ends of the cowl by weaving it in. So I'm going to go through that top V part here and back around like this. Then I'm going to pull the yarn through on the other side, flip this over, and weave the tail through by following a strand of yarn through and weaving it in like this. Once you have everything woven through, you can just snip the tail and your cowl is complete. And you're just going to want to weave in the ends on the other side now as well. I'm going to walk you through how to change the gauge of the cowl. And what does that mean? So I knit the cowl on 9mm needles using super bulky weight yarn, and the cowl is 22 inches in circumference. So if I wanted to use thinner yarn, let's say I wanted to use worsted weight yarn and smaller needles, let's say I wanted to use 5mm needles, I would need to figure out how many stitches to cast on to get me the same circumference that I've already knit. So if I were to follow the pattern step by step the same way and cast on 56 stitches with smaller needles and thinner yarn, my cowl would be very small. Likewise, if I used a much thicker yarn and larger needles, like 12mm needles, and cast on 56 stitches, it would be way too big. So basically, we need to figure out a ratio, our new ratio, to give us our cast on stitches in our different gauge. So I'm going to show you how to calculate this. Don't worry, a little bit of math is not that intimidating, I promise, I promise. So let's say our gauge with our worsted weight yarn and smaller needles, 5mm needles, is 20 stitches per 4 inches. And gauge, just a quick little refresher, my gauge with my cowl was 10 stitches per 4 inches. I have 10 stitches in 4 inches, okay? And my new gauge is 20 stitches per 4 inches. Definitely make a gauge swatch to figure out how many stitches you have, and gauge swatch is just a sample so you can figure out how many stitches you've got in 4 inches. Okay, so if my new gauge is 20 stitches per 4 inches, and I want my cowl to be the same length, we're gonna do a ratio. This is my new gauge. And we're just doing a ratio. If I want my cowl to be 22 inches, the same circumference as the one I did, you can change this to be any sort of circumference you'd like. Maybe you want it to be 20, maybe you want it to be 24. And then we are solving for how many stitches we need to cast on. So we'll take our new gauge, 20 stitches per 4 inches, equals the number of cast on stitches we should cast on over 22 inches. So it is a ratio. So you solve for X. And when you solve for X, you're going to do 20 times 22 divided by 4. So 20 times 22 divided by 4 is 110 stitches. So we lucked out that that's an even number and it works out well. When you're calculating a cast on stitch amount, make sure you've got an even number. So if this was 109 stitches, I would round up to 110 stitches. We need to have an even number so our 1x1 rib works out evenly. So that's how you figure out how many cast on stitches you will need for a certain circumference. Again, you can use any gauge you'd like and any circumference you'd like. It's just a ratio over stitches over inches, stitches over inches. Gauge stitches over gauge width, cast on stitches, new cast on stitches over the cowl circumference or the cowl width, okay? Some fun ways to get creative with cowl designs. I wanted to show you a simple basic cowl that would be easy for you to modify and get creative with and come up with your own design. But you could change the cowl and make it using a bunch of different colors. You could do stripes, you could do color work, you could make it much longer and fold it over. You could use a variety of different stitches. You could knit it this way There are a bunch of different ways that you can get creative with making a cowl. So I encourage you to, once you've mastered how to knit the basic cowl, to figure out how to get creative and make one on your own with a new design. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you love your cowl, and I can't wait to see you here for the next video. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notifications button so you know when I publish all of my patterns and tutorials. Thanks, guys.